Most ancient belief systems do not address the question of where humans are in the cosmos beyond saying that we are here. Here, of course, being the center of the universe. The stars and planets are moving, as seen from the Earth. This was taken to indicate that everything was in motion around the Earth, making the Earth the center of the universe. This was reasonable based on what can be observed without instruments. Placing Earth at the center of the universe is called geocentrism. Consider what prior civilizations did not know. No one knew that stars are other suns. That planets are orbiting these stars. That we are in a collection of stars called a galaxy. Or that the Milky Way is not the entire universe. The universe was thought to be what we can see from Earth. This is a fraction of what is out there. What about heliocentrism in other cultures? In China, after Confucianism was adopted as China's official state philosophy in 134 BCE, it monopolized Chinese thinking to the exclusion of all other schools of thought. The Confucian hierarchical structure of heaven, earth, emperor, parent, teacher was used to justify the rule of the emperor as the son of heaven. The Confucian dogma hindered the development of astronomy in China for 2,000 years. The Chinese did not discover that the earth was round, or learn that the earth orbits the sun until Western missionaries arrived in China in the 17th century. What about Islam? The Quran says that both the sun and the moon swim or float in a circuitous path, celestial sphere, or, more likely, a hemisphere. Allah brings the sun from the east, which then goes high above the earth, and after sunset goes to a resting place. All this takes place around an earth that is spread out, or flattened, and which possesses a firmament of 7 heavens built atop it without visible pillars. Worship of the sun was central to Inca and Aztec society. They had their own system of constellations and causes emanating from the sky connecting to them. But they never discovered that the earth is going around the sun. The discovery that the earth orbits the sun is an example of how people have only recently learned basic facts about the universe. All people have lived and died in the same universe, but most did not know anything about it. All knowledge of reality is recent. It cannot be guessed, it must be taught. In 280 BC, Aristarchus of Samos proposed the theory of heliocentrism. Aristarchus thought that the sun was the central fire of the universe. He put the known planets in their correct order, orbiting the sun. However, the proposal by both Aristotle and Ptolemy that Earth was the center of the universe predominated in Europe through the Middle Ages. In the 13th century, St. Thomas Aquinas reconciled the ancient Greek model of the universe with Christian doctrine. Earth was the center of the universe. Hell was at the center of the earth. Heaven was outside of a celestial sphere of fixed stars. A heliocentric model left no place for heaven and hell. In 1543 AD, Nicholas Copernicus supported heliocentrism based on observation. He did not publish until that year, the year he died, for fear of the Catholic Church. In 1584, Dominican monk Giordano Bruno published the book on the infinite universe and worlds. He proposed that the stars are suns and have their own planets, which have their own civilizations. For this modest suggestion, he was burnt at the stake as a heretic in 1600. Not long after, in 1609, Galileo was one of the first to build and use a telescope. Based on his observations, he supported the heliocentric model. The idea that the Earth is moving was upsetting to church fathers. Besides imprisoning Galileo, the Catholic Church suppressed heliocentrism. In the middle of the 17th century, Descartes offered a theory that vortices form stars and planets. Not only did Descartes provide the first distinctly modern formulation of laws of nature and a conservation principle of motion, but he also constructed what would become the most popular theory of planetary motion of the late 17th century. In 1685, Bernard Louis Bouvier de Fontenelle's book Conversations on the Plurality of Worlds supported and popularized Descartes' theory. Heliocentrism was still not the accepted model of where the Earth is in relation to the Sun. The other was the stationary Earth model devised by Tycho Brahe. These two coexisted from the 16th into the 17th century. Early in the 18th century, the truth began to dominate. In 1726, Newton's book Principia Mathematica explained the laws of planetary motion. In 1728, the fact that the Earth goes around the Sun was finally confirmed experimentally. Using a huge telescope, British astronomer James Bradley saw that the stars seemed to move very slowly as the Earth revolved around the Sun. In 1729, Roger Boscovich also demonstrated that the Earth is moving. In 1755, Immanuel Kant published Universal Natural History and Theory of the Heavens that postulated that there are other galaxies besides the Milky Way. In 1757, restrictions on publishing the Copernican theory of heliocentrism were lifted by the Catholic Church. Heliocentrism was allowed to be taught from then on. The number of all people who have ever lived is 108 billion. How many knew that the Earth is going around the Sun? The population of the Earth in 1760 was estimated to be 770 million. If some Europeans began to be taught that the Earth was going around the Sun about that time, how many people were ever made aware of this fact? About 60% of everyone who has ever lived were born after 1760. Considering that a fact like, the Earth goes around the Sun, must be taught, it would take a long time for this fact to become part of the general knowledge of humanity. Native peoples in the Americas would probably not be taught this until many years after 1760. The vast populations of Asia and Africa would similarly live and die without knowing this. So, what percentage of people lived their lives without knowing that the Earth is going around the Sun? I estimate 55%. This would be higher if the birth rate had not increased so dramatically since 1760. Even today, a small percentage of isolated people still do not know this. The discovery that the Earth orbits the Sun is an example of how people have only recently learned basic facts about the universe. All people have lived and died in the same universe, but most did not know anything about it. All knowledge of reality is recent. It cannot be guessed, it must be taught. After recognizing that the Earth is orbiting the Sun, it was still believed that the Sun was static and the center of the universe. The idea that every object in the universe is in constant motion, or that the whole solar system is moving around the outer rim of the Milky Way and completes a galactic orbit every 230 million years, was way beyond anyone's imagination. The telescope was essential to the discovery of heliocentrism. What was the timeline for the development of this instrument, and what other discoveries were made as it was improved? In 1608, Hans Lippershey filed a patent for a telescope in the Netherlands. In 1609, Galileo Galilei built his first telescope. In 1663, Laurent Cassegrain created an alternative reflecting telescope. In 1668, Isaac Newton invented his version of a reflecting telescope. In 1774, the groundbreaking astronomer William Herschel created a 20-inch mirror for his reflecting telescope. In 1781, he discovered Uranus. The idea that there were unknown planets was shocking. He published the most complete catalogue of stars. By 1820, he had charted 5,000 objects. He determined the rotation period of Mars and that the Martian polar caps vary seasonally. He discovered moons orbiting Uranus and Saturn. In 1802, he announced the hypothesis that the two stars might be binary sidereal systems orbiting under mutual gravitational attraction. Beside these discoveries, Herschel had some wild ideas. He was sure that he had found ample evidence of life on the moon and compared it to the English countryside. He theorized that Mars is populated. He also speculated that the interior of the Sun was populated. In 1845, William Parsons, Lord Rosse, using his 73-inch telescope, the Leviathan, discovered the spiral nature of some nebulas, now known as spiral galaxies. He resolved the hypothesis, which said that planets and stars were formed by gravity acting on gaseous clouds. Before Darwin, this shockingly indicated that the universe itself had evolved. In 1846, Johann Gottfried Galle discovered Neptune, a planet too dim to be seen with our eyes. This discovery was also significant because to find it, he looked at a location based on a mathematical calculation of other planets' orbits made by Urbain Le Verrier. By 1846, how far had we come in uncovering the reality of Earth in space? By the early 18th century, heliocentrism, suppressed since ancient times, began to be accepted. Telescopes developed rapidly from the early 17th century. The last two planets, Uranus and Neptune, were discovered by 1846. Astronomers rapidly expanded the catalogue of stars and speculated about their formation, but everyone still thought that the Milky Way was the entire universe. Depending on where you were born, you might or might not know about these discoveries. It took a long time for knowledge to spread. In 1920, there was a famous debate between Harlow Shapley and Heber Curtis about the nature of spiral nebulae and the size of the universe. It was known that there are some clusters of stars near the Milky Way, but what about these spiral nebulae? Are they near or far? Shapley believed that these nebulae were relatively small and lay within the outskirts of the Milky Way, because the Milky Way was the entire universe. Curtis held that they were independent galaxies, so the universe was much larger. This was not settled until 1924, by Edwin Hubble. His observations of Cepheid variable stars proved that nebulae are other galaxies, and they are all moving away from us and each other at a high rate. It is amazing that the fact that there are other galaxies was not confirmed until less than 100 years ago. How many people ever born could have known this? I estimate about 7.5%. They were alive or born after this discovery. How many were ever taught this is unknown, but today for many it is common knowledge. In 2023, the James Webb Space Telescope made discoveries of galaxies that formed too soon after the Big Bang. This upset theories about how long it took stars and galaxies to form but did not conflict with the overall model of the Big Bang. New instruments, new discoveries. That's what's great about science. We should be glad that we now know where we are in this endless, teeming mass of matter. Please hit like and subscribe on the next screen. Thank you.